Hey folks, this is Kelani. One of the most fun parts of playing an MMO, or really any RPG in general, is watching your character grow. Now whether that growth is in raw power to deal more damage, more stamina to survive your journeys easier, or just amassing enough wealth to chuckle at the thought of spending 2 million gold on a spider mount, it's all about watching your numbers get bigger. So what happens when the numbers get too big? That's an interesting case when it comes to single player games with a decisive end, but when we ask that question to an MMO, with ongoing support and additional expansions planned, you actually have to start thinking about how to rein things in a little bit. It's quite odd to see 6 or 7 digit numbers popping up on your screen constantly, and it seems like the dev team agrees somewhat, because our numbers are going to end up significantly smaller at the beginning of Battle for Azeroth. So let's have a look at what the numbers are going to look like so far, and how we can expect this stat squish to affect the way the game feels and plays. Remember, this is all alpha footage, so it is subject to change and may not reflect the finished product. If you're new to the World of Warcraft, you might be freaking out a little bit. Numbers are going down. Surely that means our characters are just going to be a little wimpy shell of their former glory, right? Thankfully, this isn't the dev team's first rodeo when it comes to stat squishes. We actually had a pretty significant stat squish going into Warlords of Draenor. There were a few worries and a handful of doomsayers, but everything worked out quite nicely in the end. The gameplay aspect should largely remain the same because every single number related to your combat and damage is being moved at the same rate. So if you deal 20% of a monster's health with a single attack right now, you should still deal 20% of that same monster's health after the change, just the numbers being displayed are significantly lower. So the monster has 10k health instead of 1 million, and you hit for 2k instead of 200k. For Warlords of Draenor this was pretty simple, it was just a case of altering how our health, damage and stats were scaling, and how item level contributed to those stats. Item level wasn't actually reduced during the last squish, but going into Battle for Azeroth it will be. I guess the dev team doesn't want us to go over 1000 item level. That's the only significant difference this time around, which could maybe make things a bit complicated and has the potential to mess up some lower level items, but we'll see how things turn out. Let's have a look at just how large a shift we're dealing with here. At level 110, your current item level will be reduced quite significantly. Normal Land Taurus gear currently sits at 930 item level on live servers, but on the Battle for Azeroth Alpha, normal Land Taurus gear is down at item level 210. Heroic gear goes from 945 to 225, and Mythic gear is 960 to 240. So you can see that's a huge difference. For the majority of people going into Battle for Azeroth, your item level will probably be hovering somewhere between 200 and 240, and that's at our current max level. Take a minute and think about how that's going to affect everything before level 110. Suddenly, what was over 900 item levels of gear progression is being squashed all the way down into 200 to 250 item levels. That's going to be a very interesting change to get used to while leveling up. Instead of item level jumps of 10 or 15, it's probably going to be more like 3 or 5 eye level upgrades, but I think this is for the best no matter which way you look at it. Honestly, I'm a little surprised we're going through this again so quickly though. We went from an item level of 566 from Mythic Siege of Orgrimmar to 960 from Antorus. That's 400 item levels across 2 expansions. That's a ridiculous rate of growth for our characters and their power. Obviously, things got out of hand yet again, so I would be very interested to see what kind of life cycle the dev team sees from our next stat squish. Are we going to have another one in 2 expansions time because we're back to over 5 million health, dealing 6 figures worth of damage? I hope not. I'd like to see a much steadier power progression in the future, but we'll just have to wait and see. Now, it's all fine and dandy saying item level this, item level that, but what does that actually translate to in-game? Sadly, we're currently unable to copy characters to the alpha client, so I can't create any one-for-one direct comparisons, but we can check out our template character's item level and go from there. Each of these characters starts at item level 190, so that's about the equivalent of just above Heroic Tomb of Sargeras gear. You'll probably end up going into Battle for Azeroth with a higher item level than this, so keep that in mind. Right now, at level 110, with that item level 190, our character has just below 16,000 health, so we're right back down to tens of thousands instead of millions, but don't worry about it, everything is scaling down as well. Monsters at level 110 currently have about 13 to 15,000 health, depending on what you're fighting. Some of the harder quest mobs get up to 30 or 40k, with elites scaling even higher. So we're on even footing with pretty much everything we're fighting, with our abilities dealing a few thousand per hit for larger abilities and a few hundred for small abilities like auto attacks. In general, I would expect average DPS to be in the thousands until you start leveling up through Battle for Azeroth. The current level cap on Alpha is level level 119, so let's see how much our numbers grow in that simple 9-level difference. Through just questing and getting quest rewards, my item level at level 119 has gone up to 249. Remember that Mythic and Taurus gear is currently clocking in at item level 240, so I'm just a little ahead of that at level 119. That means if you're rocking Mythic and Taurus gear going into Battle for Azeroth, you might not actually start replacing it until you hit 118, 119, or maybe even some pieces will take you all the way to 120. In those 9 levels, our health has gone from just under 16k to just under 34k, so more than double. I would expect another few thousand on top of that for level 120, and then the real gear and item level grind will start from there. I wouldn't be surprised if we reach 100k health again by the time of the second or third tier of raiding in this expansion, but that again depends on how Blizzard decides to tune the numbers. A typical enemy at 119 has about 26 to 30k health, and our damage has increased quite a bit as well. I would say from item level 190 at level 110 to item level 249 at level 119, my damage has just about doubled. But that's on my Demon Hunter, and we haven't really gotten any use of the extra systems which are supposed to be in Battle for Azeroth, such as the Azerite armor. So I would expect when this is actually live and a complete experience, your damage will be more than double by the time you hit 120. I also doubt a proper number tuning has been done yet, so if some classes aren't scaling as well right now, I assume that will be addressed before the game goes live. That being said, monsters in general are pretty tough to deal with. Pulling more than 2 or 3 mobs without specifically preparing to kill multiple things will most likely end in your death if you aren't a tank. Even then, trying to mass pull as a tank is a little frustrating because your damage is fairly low. Obviously that is with the template character of 190 item level, so coming into this with some better gear you'll probably do a much better job. One of the main reasons I'm having so much fun with my Demon Hunter on the alpha is that I can pull almost as much as I want, providing I have the cooldowns available to destroy them before they hit me. If they get too many attacks off, I'll die pretty much instantly, and there's a few times where I've tried this and ended up getting stunned or crowd controlled and I just fell over, but it's all good fun when it works out. If you don't have any strong bursty cooldowns or a handful of friends to speed up the entire process, you might end up taking 1 or 2 monsters at a time. If you're under-geared going into Battle for Azeroth, more than one might prove to be a struggle, so it looks like monsters might be dangerous again, but that's almost always the case with the new expansion, so we'll see how long it lasts this time. Leveling through each zone has been fairly easy going for the most part. Some quests require you to take on an elite or two, which you might have to get a group for, but with enough players running around I'm sure you can do just fine on your own. Overall, I wouldn't really worry too much about the scaling changes for leveling. You should be fine if you take things at an appropriate pace, and the main power progression doesn't usually happen until max level anyways. So what about other parts of the game? Leveling up from 1 is going to be weird for sure, but with the world scaling changes I wouldn't expect to see a significant difference. One major concern when this squish happened in the past is what's going to happen to soloing old world content. Remember that my character is currently capped at 119 and I don't have access to a lot of powerful bonuses that are going to be around when Battle for Azeroth goes live, but let's see how things play out anyway. I decided to start out with something which should have been fairly easy, Siege of Orgrimmar Normal. So going in here I was immediately surprised that I was having trouble with trash, and on my own couldn't actually get past some of the harder trash packs at the start of the instance. Okay, Mr. Pandaria might be a little hard. That's weird. Let's go back to Kata and check out Dragon Soul. Trying out 25-man Heroic first, because that's what a lot of players will probably end up wanting to run for transmog and mounts. The trash takes quite a bit to go through, but doesn't seem to have much of a chance of actually killing you. The bosses, on the other hand, I think that's probably going to be a no-go. Going back in on normal 10 player, this boss still one-shots me, though his health was going down quickly enough that I could probably kill him before things got too crazy, but that's the first boss with next to no mechanics. For the rest, you might be a little out of luck. This doesn't bode too well for old content right now. Let's go back another expansion and check out Icecrown Citadel. I started off in 10 player normal mode just to see what the easiest option was, and the trash still takes a few hits to go down. The larger trash mobs seem to take way too long, and when you get to the boss it gets a little frustrating. It's not like you won't be able to take them down, they still can't threaten you at all, it just seems to take forever to kill them at this point in time. So at this point, even if you're running Wrath of the Lich King raids, it looks like it's going to take you a lot longer to get through the entire thing compared to what we have on live right now. For the sake of science, I also went back into the Burning Crusade and vanilla raids just to see how they play out. The first boss in Black Temple went down without too many issues, but for a level 119 I would have fully expected that to go down in a hit or two. It seems like everything is going to take longer, which could create a few problems if any of the bosses have stun lock mechanics or anything which would prevent you from acting. All the way back down to vanilla, the Molten Core Trash is finally where you'll see some one-shot happening, but even then it's not all the time. Bosses again pose no real threat to you, but even vanilla raid bosses aren't going down in one hit. So hopefully things aren't even close to finished in this regard. Either the damage boost for old content isn't working properly, or the content hasn't been scaled down properly, because if this goes live as it is, that could be a huge problem for a lot of people who like to farm old raids for transmog, mounts, pets, you name it. If it comes from older raids, then it's going to be significantly harder to collect by yourself if the current scaling is what we end up with when Battle for Azeroth ships in August. Personally, I love farming older raids because chances are, even if you were playing through them when they were current, you can always pick up one or two new things, and it's fun going back and just clearing your way through without having to worry too much about the bosses or abilities. That's part of what makes old raid running so relaxing. If you suddenly have to stress and focus on boss abilities, or running the entire raid just takes too long now, I can see a lot of people just cutting that out of their playtime. Again, hopefully something is missing here, because I'm honestly surprised at how much trouble I had in so many of these old expansions, and even with vanilla bosses taking a good few hits before they fall over, it just feels really weird. Maybe I've been spoiled from being able to speedrun through anything I want for the last few years, but I would think this is just something the dev team has overlooked at this point in time. But that's how the item level squish is playing out in the current version of Alpha, and how it affects certain areas of the game. What do you think about stat squishes in general? Were you around for the Warlord squish? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A huge thank you to our supporters over on Patreon. I hope you like the little Sunday plan going forward. If you want to hop on that train, grab a few perks, help support the channel, all that good stuff, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.